Okay, so really quickly, so the reason that we had moved to Richmond and I decided to start this business is I basically quit trumpet for like 2 years. So I got to New York and I had got my first show. I was subbing on Radio City and a couple other shows, and I had just been offered my second show. And I went out, and I'll keep names out of this. I went out with some like the heavies in New York one night. I just audited Book of Mormon for Raul, and he's like, "Hey, we're gonna go hang out and stuff like this." And so I went and hung out with a couple of, I would call them the Mount Rushmore, and I'm gonna leave, like I said, I'm gonna leave the names out of everything else. The Mount Rushmore of trumpet playing in New York at the time, and this is 2013, 24, no, 2014. And I was, my wife and kids were still living in New York, in Maryland at the time, and I was in New York, so I was doing my minimum of shows, driving back, doing the family thing, going back, doing my minimum shows. Once I got the second show, we were like, okay, let's kind of move up here. But I was sitting around. It was a Tuesday night. We were having drinks till like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and the like all of a sudden the conversation just got really dark about like it's another thing we don't talk about in the business. When you are successful in the music business, you're gone. You're gone. Some nights, sometimes every night of the week. So I had missed birthdays and missed wedding anniversaries and Christmas Eves and New Year's Eves and Thanksgiving days and like all this kind of stuff for years. And I was sitting around listening to all my heroes, and they were basically talking about like how much they'd missed in their kids and their families' lives. And here I had a brand new wife and two beautiful kids living 3.5 hours away. And the next morning, I called the New York contractor. I had a light bulb go out. Called the New York contractor and said, "I can't do the show. I'm going home." And I drove that next day, packed up my apartment in Astoria, drove home to Maryland. And 3 days later, I took everything I owned trumpet wise to Baltimore Brass, except for my four original mouthpieces, including the one from Vents, and I sold it all. And we moved to Richmond. So it was that the business was out of necessity. I was trying to figure out what to do with my life at that point, right? And the business was out of necessity of like, okay, what do I do? But I'd worked with her father, so much in the pest control industry. I was like, well, I want to start my own business. I don't want to work for anybody. So that was like the natural thing. And and I talked about this when I do master classes. I've done master classes at Hart and University of Maryland and Towson and Catholic and stuff like that. The skills that you procure as a freelance musician transfer into every business on the planet. And they transfer so smoothly and so, I want to say, aggressively. Like I could take any freelance musician who is successful into the top 50 companies in the world, and guarantee that within 5 years they would be the number one salesman, the number one directors, whatever else, because the interpersonal skills that are required to be a freelance musician on a day-to-day basis, you can do anything. Anything. You have to deal with so many different personalities. You're firing on so many cylinders at the same time. You're juggling finances, and you're juggling time management, and you're juggling artistry, and you're juggling people skills. Like it's like all the things that all the companies focus one at a time on, we do every day, all day long for our entire careers. So I knew starting a business was going to be in my future because I was like, okay, once I got around what I was going to do, and that's how it started. And then about a year and a half after that, maybe 2 years, business was kind of rocking and rolling. And my wife was like, "Okay, thank you for doing this, but you've got a big gaping hole right in the middle of you. You got to start playing again." And what was cool about it was that not in 2 weeks after she said that, I got a call from Ed Walters at National Theater, and he said, "Hey, West Side Story is coming back to National Theater for a couple weeks. Conductors requested you play. What do you want to do?" And I said, "Give me a week. Let me see if I can pull it together." And so I ordered a Yamaha trumpet. I think it was a Bergeron off of musiciansfriend.com.
Wow.
Got it delivered to the house and spent about a week trying to get my face back together. And I called him back up and like, all right, let's do it. And so then I got back into playing, and then that's kind of been it now.